Welcome to another episode of Hawkett Podcast. Our guest is JJ, a jewelry maker and blogger from Randa Blanc and the Muse Memorandum. How's it going?
Great, thanks. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for inviting me.
So, where are you from? Tell us your origin story. We'll start from there.
Oh God. Okay. So I'm originally from Northwest New Jersey on the Delaware Water Gap border there, kind of northwest next to Pennsylvania, and grew up in a small town and spent a lot of time in nature and just had a lot of interest in anything to do with nature and astronomy and history and things like that.
hmm So tell us how you got interested in metalsmithing. Like now you do make jewelry. So how did you get interested in metalsmithing, and how did it become a career for you?
Well, I've always been an artist, and when I was a kid, I was always doing anything, any kind of creating, painting, drawing, just anything I could get my hands on. And as I got older, towards high school, I got interested in photography. My dad, he's a retired research scientist, but he was also doing photography, and my mom as well. So there was a big theme with that in my family, and I got interested in that. So I took some classes in high school. We had a really good art program in my high school. We had a full dark room, and so I started taking pictures and doing things in the dark room, and then I got really just focused on anything art in the whole program, and I ended up going to Savannah College of Art and Design on a scholarship for photography. But by the time I had gotten there, it was everything was switching to digital, and I really liked doing things hands-on and manually, like old school analog way.
hmm
And so that was a big turnoff for me. And I had already had some interest in jewelry making. I was doing a lot of uh, beading and things like that. And my father had shown me how to make a ring out of from a coin when I was about 16. So I had that interest going on. And I went to school with my best friend at the time, and she was going to take a metalsmithing class, and she asked me if I wanted to do it with her. And I was like, of course. And so that's where that gets started. And it just completely changed my look and perspective on everything creative. And I kind of really ditched the photography. Like, I didn't take any classes in photography, even though that's what I was going to school for. I ended up doing painting and drawing and illustrating and sculpture and all that other stuff, but the main focus became the metalsmithing.
So going back to your parents, what kind of photographers were they?
Uh, More like nature photography and kind of slice of life stuff. My dad was really into a lot of black and white, I think, for a while, and then he switched to color. But we always had a sort of a makeshift dark room in our house downstairs in the laundry utility room. He had sort of done a makeshift setup for a dark room in there, and so he was always developing his own stuff. And I think, my parents have always liked to do a lot of travel, so there's a lot of travel photography too, but mostly nature, I would say.
So like birds, wildlife, like
All kinds of
I-
wildlife, yeah.
okay. So what were you into when you were starting in your photography journey, and then you decided to go some different route?
Um, I really like to do a lot of close-ups on things. I liked texture a lot, and I was really into the black and white, because I liked to really manipulate the contrast of things and sort of put the focus on the textures of things or blur things if I wanted to. So I did a lot of still life stuff. I really wasn't into photographing people or any portraiture. It was pretty much just nature and just up close still life stuff.
Okay. Now going back to your metalsmithing and what you do, what inspired you to become a metalsmith in the first place?
It's a really good question. I think, well, the start of it was with that ring that my dad showed me how to make. I thought that was really pretty fantastic that you could sort of just take something and completely repurpose it into something else. And I liked working with the metal, just the way you could manipulate it and everything. And when I got into the metalsmithing classes, I really enjoyed working with fire. That was a new thing for me. I never considered fire as a way to be creative. So that's something that really drew me in, and also just being able to make something pretty much out of nothing, or like just pieces and parts of things. You have this sheet of metal and you just transform it into something flat and lifeless, into something three-dimensional and beautiful. With You can do different colors and textures and add a stone, and um, it just really spoke to me.
Mhm. So what is the art of metalsmithing about?
It's basically, I actually had to look at that because I'm like, oh my gosh, what does it all really mean? But it's basically, um, it's sort of like being a blacksmith in a way, where you're working with metal, but it's different types of metal, and usually it's alloys. There's silversmiths that primarily only work with silver, and metalsmiths work with pretty much any kind of silver that can be used, or sorry, metal that can be used. Um, as far as what's okay to wear, there's not always going to be. Uh, there's metals that you just can't wear. So I like to work with brass and copper and silver and bronze. Um, Use some nickel, silver, and occasionally, I like to repurpose a lot of things, and I like old coins and stuff like that. So sometimes some of the coins will have some zinc in them. But yeah, it's basically working with these different alloy metals, and using heat with the fire. And there's a lot of sawing and hammering involved and that kind of thing.
So can you work with two different metals, or will there be an interaction between if you use one metal and another metal and you try to like saw it together? Will there a problem occur?
Sometimes there is. I had a problem actually the last couple days with a ring that I had made with a coin and a stone, and I had to resize it for a client. It was one on my website, and it just was one size, and normally it's not a problem. But with this particular coin, I think it does have some zinc or something in the content, and I was trying to solder brass to it, and it gets really dirty, and you have to have clean connections. And I was really having a hard time getting everything to stick together. So yeah, sometimes it can be really difficult, but I managed to get it together.
Mhm. So how long did it take you to learn the ins and outs of metalsmithing and this general what you do?
Um, I'm still learning stuff, but it's taken several years. I mean, I'm 50 now, and I started when I was 18. And I haven't been doing it, completely consistently throughout all those years, but for the most part. Uh, so I don't know. I mean, it's probably to get to a level where you can actually have a business and start selling things. It just depends. It depends on what you're doing. If you're doing just silver and you've got a good instructor and you've got the right tools and all of that, I don't think it would take much more than a few years to become decent at it. But I think, the more time you put into it, the better you're going to get. So
Mhm,
it's not a real concrete answer, but it can take several decades to kind of master things.
mhm. So did you have an extra instructor that you looked up to that helped you along with your journey?
Yeah, I did actually, at SCAD, at Savannah College of Art and Design that I went to. I had an instructor named Jennifer Stenhouse, and she was just such a great instructor. And she basically, I took, I think, at least 3 classes with her. And throughout those courses, she covered a whole bunch of different techniques. Um, so yeah, and just her way of teaching and her being so encouraging and fun and just inspiring. And she is still teaching to this day. She's out in I think, the Pacific Northwest, and she has online workshops and still teaching in person. We actually
Mhm,
follow each other on Instagram.
mhm.
I thought that was pretty cool because I've always looked up to her.
That's awesome. So now tell us about your business, Ren de Blanc. When did you get started with your jewelry making business?
I officially started, oh gosh, well, I mean, officially probably 2016 when I really just decided to cut out all the crap and focus on it. And when I say crap, I mean I had several jobs that kind of just, I've had a lot of things happen in my life that kind of set the trajectory for me in a direction I didn't want to go. And so I had several years of doing different jobs, mostly in high end retail sales in Manhattan. Um, so I think I just forgot what we were talking about. I'm sorry.
I asked you how your business got started. You said you
Yes,
started in
yes. So
2016.
thank you. Sorry, I got stuck there for a second. Um, yeah, so I had just about had it with working with other people, or for other people, I should say. You know, the last job I had in New York was being run by a major narcissist who was stealing people's money and
Mhm,
everything. And I just had had it with that kind of situation. So, and I had a lot of, I was making things on my own on the side for a while. And I had a lot of good response to that. And I had started selling at different local markets, artisan markets. And I decided, like, I just can't keep working for these other people. And maybe I should just really jump into this and do it for myself. So I started back then.
mhm. So what is the your name of your company mean, and how did you get the idea of having that name?
Uh, I always kind of skirt around this, but I'll probably give you a little more information than I give most people. So my given name means a lot of different versions of uh, fair lady, white fairy, things to do with being pale or fair or white. And um, it's derived from Guinevere, which was uh, related to King Arthur, the whole legend and everything. And she was said to be the queen goddess, and she represented the triple goddess, the maiden, mother, and the crone. And it also relates to the White Queen in Alice in Wonderland and The Looking Glass. And she is said to live in backwards time and be able to remember the future. So uh, it's just something I've always really related to. I always feel like I've been living in backwards time my whole life. And I do have some abilities where I am able to perhaps see into the future or remember the future or whatever. So it just felt really right to me. And I didn't want to just call myself the White Queen. I wanted something that was a little more accessible in an international way, and I am part French, so I wanted to pay homage to that. So Red de Blanc is the White Queen, or the Queen of White in French.
That's pretty awesome. That's very interesting. So now, when you started making like different jewelries, how did you price them? Like, how did you decide? Okay, how much am I gonna charge for this much, and then on so on and so forth.
Well, it's been tricky along the way. There is kind of a formula just for retail items in general, where you take your cost and labor and time and all of that. For a metalsmith or a jeweler or any artist, really, you have to consider the cost of your materials, and you have to pay yourself. And for a long time, I wasn't really factoring that in, so I was kind of underselling myself. But yeah, so I basically look at the materials and the time it takes me. I mean, I basically try to pay myself at least $20 to $25 an hour, which might be low to some people, but still, it's kind of what I stick at least. And what I've learned has taken me years, so my experience has gone into that price too, and my design sense. So that's kind of how it evolves. And I like to keep my prices reasonable and competitive. And so I mean, now I have a good sense of the way things work because I've been doing it for a while, but I like to just kind of look and see what other people are selling for similar items, so that I'm not going too high with my price or not underselling myself.
Hmm. So, what kind of products do you provide to people? What kind of jewelry do you have on your website that you would like to share?
Oh, I do pretty much anything. I do earrings and rings and pendants, necklaces, bracelets, mostly cuff bracelets. Uh, I can do some pins or brooches, things like that. So that's like the main part of what I do. And it's not it's not commercial jewelry. I mean, it's basically art jewelry. And I do make some things that are more traditional and classic looking, but I prefer personally to do things that are more unique and like large, chunky statement pieces.
Hmm. So now, let's say you get a custom order from a client. How's the process? How do you like start the process to like fulfill the order of a customer that wants a custom piece made by you?
Usually, there's a bit of a dialogue there to just kind of hone in on what they're looking for. And if it's something with a stone, and if they want to provide it to me, they can, or I can source it for them. So I'll, try to hone down what they're looking for. Like if they want something faceted or rough or tiny or large, whatever. So I try to narrow it down just by asking them different questions. And then I'll kind of search around if they need me to find something and send them examples and just hone it down that way. And then I do prefer to at least take a 50% deposit, because I've had people just, oh yeah, I want this, and and then suddenly something changes for them in their finances, or they just flake out or whatever. So I need to have a deposit of some sort just to get the process going, especially if I'm going to have to be purchasing stones for them or purchasing materials. So I ask for at least 50%. I do prefer people to pay up front, but I understand that's not always the best for people too.
Hmm. So, what is your typical day like? Like, how long do you like make jewelry and then take a break and relax and do other things?
Um, these days, I I don't like to work very early. I've never been a morning person. I have been getting up quite early these days because of my cat and just my ongoing insomnia issues. But I usually start working now around maybe 10 or 11 a.m. And I'll pretty much work until like 4 or 5, depending on what it is. And, I take a lunch break in there. I'm not like hardcore on things unless it has to be that way. If I can't just leave something, um, I like to just follow through with things. But, and I don't necessarily work Monday through Friday either, because sometimes, I've got something else to do, another project, or it's a really nice day and I don't want to sit inside. So there are various different factors where I'll switch my days around and take a day or two off during the week and then work on the weekend instead. So
Mhm.
that's what
So
I
what
would
do you
say.
like or dislike about your job?
I love the flexibility to be able to take time off when I want. Um, it's what I don't like is uh, being a creative person. Sometimes I can't just turn that on like a switch, and uh, it can be challenging if I'm just not feeling it that day. I don't feel like doing it, um, and I've got a deadline, and then I've got to really ask myself, like, oh, you really going to take a day off, or are you going to just get this done? I mean, the big challenge is maintaining that discipline, I guess. But I love the flexibility, and I love that a lot of the time I get to just do my own stuff and be creative.
Mhm. Now, what are the most essential skills for a metalsmith to have?
The most essential skills.
Yes.
Um, as far as like hands-on stuff, I would say, uh, well, you don't want to be a klutz. If you're very klutzy, that may not be the best thing. I would say having patience and determination, good eyesight or eyewear to help you see things, because that's very important, especially with the small stuff. And being pretty good with your hands. You kind of have to have you have to have kind of nimble fingers, but also strong hands. There's a lot of sawing and hammering involved. And then also, uh, you have to get sort of lose your fear of fire, because obviously you need to work with fire a lot. So yeah, I would say, though, really just having determination and patience is a big part of it.
Mhm. So going back to supplies, I know you buy metals and necessary supplies for running your business. How challenging has it become since inflation has you're having inflation issues and prices have been going up? How hard has it been for you to get stuff?
It's not so bad right now. Um, you know, During the height of the pandemic, it became very difficult for some things, especially with metal supply. It was taking sometimes like a week and a half, 10 days to get supplies, which is kind of ridiculous. And the shipping was crazy to get it expedited. The prices have increased quite a bit. Like the price of silver has gone up quite a bit over the last 4 years. And, the prices have gone up. The prices have definitely gone up. And I've noticed it is a little bit harder to find more specific things, different kinds of stones and stuff like that. And a lot of it has become more outsourced to overseas. And that's a challenge with trying to get things in a timely manner. So it's been a bit more of a challenge, but I've still been able to get everything when I need it, basically.
Mhm. Now, what is the most challenging project you have worked on so far?
I would say probably my own stuff. I mean, I have worked with other people. I've done some pieces for editorial photo shoots for magazines. Uh, but this year, I had decided, like I've done some costume design, and I really want to be able to branch out because I am an artist, just first and foremost. Um, I like to keep things flexible and make different kinds of things aside from just jewelry. So I have been trying to work on a project for costume design using copper mesh, like large pieces of it, and manipulating it and changing the finish and things like that, and trying to be able to have it be wearable and flexible and fluid and have that movement. So that's been a bit of a challenge.
Mhm. Now, as an artist, what is your creative process like?
Well, I couldn't say, at least for the metalsmithing and the jewelry and all that. I try to challenge myself all the time to come up with new things, and sometimes it's not just coming to me. So, what I've been doing these last few years is, picking something, whether it's like a antique coin or old parts of something, or stones, big raw specimens, that kind of thing. Going through what I have already and trying to look at things in a new way, because I've had some of these things I've had for years. I just hold on to things because I know eventually I'll have a use for them and I'll come up with something. So I've been going back through my surplus of stuff, and I'll see something and I'm like, oh, like suddenly I'll just kind of have an idea of a way to make something with it. And sometimes I just wake up. Like, it's not necessarily that I've maybe dreamed about something, but sometimes I'll just wake up and the idea will just be there. So I just start trying to come up with ways to do things.
Mhm. So now, how do you ensure that your work is of high quality when it comes to your jewelry?
Basically, taking my time with it. I try not to rush with things. Uh, Sometimes there's things that come very easily to me that are just more of a simple process. So that stuff I kind of just have down pat. But with the most of the things, I try to take my time and really do a lot of spot checking on things to make sure that the solder, points of contact are good and solid, and just making sure all the connections are really clean, so the solder is good and fixed on there. And also really running my fingers around things to make sure nothing's too sharp. I don't want any of my clients to get hurt on anything, especially some of the big chunky stuff. And the reticulated metal, which can be it can be very sort of coarse and have some jagged edges. So I've got to make sure that everything's filed and sanded down. And I basically kind of check and recheck and recheck myself before I'm like, okay, it's good, I'm going to send it out. It's basically, I keep a rule of thumb that if it's something that I wouldn't wear, then I'm definitely not going to expect anyone else to be wearing it.
Mhm. Now, what is the common misconception people have about what you do?
I think some people think that it's easy. I think it definitely can be easy. It's not to say that it can't be easy, but some people think that my work is expensive and they're not really factoring in all of the years of experience and time that's taken to get to the point I'm at to make things. So there's that, and just uh, I think people have this idea, maybe because I'm not a commercial jeweler, and there's a difference there. And I think a lot of people have in their mind that I'm um, doing casting of pieces, like I'm making molds of things, and I've done some of that in the past, which it can make that process easier and cheaper. Um, but I think people take for granted all of the process that goes into things that are being made strictly by hand from scratch. I'm not doing any electroplating where you just dip something into metal, and it's a much easier process, and it may have a similar look to what I make, but it's not the same, and it's not the quality and the time that goes into it. So that's probably the biggest thing.
Mhm. What are your goals slash dreams for the future with your business?
Just to continue to grow, and like I said, just work on other different projects. That's why I call it brand, because I like to be able to uh, venture out into other things. Like this last year, I made some of those potentiometers. I can't even say the word. Basically, tuning knobs for guitars, and I've made some small metal sculptures for clients. And like I said, I'm trying to branch out into a bit of the costume design and just more sculptural things. So I think I'd like to keep heading in that direction, and maybe some apparel or something for the future.
Mhm. Now, what is one lesson your job has taught you that you think everyone should learn at some point in their life?
Discipline, self discipline, especially if you're going to work for yourself in a creative field. You definitely have to have that discipline, because it's so easy to just fall into like, oh, I don't feel like doing this today. I want to go to the beach. There's this show on, or oh, come out and hang out with me, kind of thing, which I don't do anymore. But when I lived in New York, it was easy to get distracted because people want to meet up or whatever. Um, it's definitely discipline, I think.
Mhm. Now, tell us about the new project you recently started called the Muse Memorandum. What is it about, and how did you get the idea for a name?
It's basically an artist feature project. Uh, where it came from was I had a spare Instagram account that I created because my main one that I started in 2013 kept getting hacked and messed with. And I had, it had taken me all these years to get my whatever I have right now, like 2,800 plus followers. So I started that second page as a backup, and it basically sat there. And I was like, what am I wasting this whole page for? So I started to post artwork on there, different artists and antiques and fashion and photography and just any kind of art I wanted to feature there, because I've always just loved art and art history. And this year, since I moved from the East Coast to Chicago, uh, I really pretty much am a homebody. I don't go out. I don't socialize much at all. And I missed having that kind of contact with people, because when I was in New York, especially selling at the market, on the sidewalk, on the street, uh, I was talking to a lot of people every day, and I missed that kind of connection with people and their really amazing stories, and just talking about different art and everything. So I decided to try to formulate something where I could have those conversations again and help other artists get some recognition and some support, because I feel like there's just so many artists out there, all different kinds, that are amazing, and they're just not getting seen or heard. So I wanted to kind of provide a platform for them. And originally I decided to just start with the blog, but I felt like that just wasn't enough to feature people. So, um, I'm an introvert and I don't like to be on camera at all. I mean, I think we know from the last time that I have some social anxiety and things like that. So it's also a way for me to kind of keep out of getting stuck in my anxiety. Um, but with the YouTube channel that I have now, uh, I'm able to have these conversations with people so that they get a little more recognition and just um, support for the work. So that's why I started it. And the name, Um, well, as artists and creative people, we often talk about the muse and what inspires us and all that. So I had that in mind. And for some reason, I just like, my name's JJ. I like to have those double letters. So I was trying to think of a word with an M so it flowed. And memorandum is like, the notes of a meeting or that kind of thing. And I just thought it kind of fit. So that's how it ended up where it is.
Hmm. So who's been your favorite artist that you've interviewed and talked to?
It's really hard. It really is. I don't know if I want to give that answer.
It could be more than one if you want.
Oh, I can't pick a favorite. I won't
Okay.
do that.
Okay, we'll move on then.
I've liked
What
them all so
okay.
much.
Okay. What is your goal for 2024 with the Memorandum?
Just to keep branching out a bit. I don't want to. That's the thing I want to always make clear to people, at least with the YouTube channel, and I call it a blog or a vlog rather. Um, I was trying to stick to one guest a month because I do the blog every week, and that's kind of it's a lot of work. I spend a lot of time trying to find artists to participate, sending out emails and telling them what I want and all that. And so there's that end of it with messages and emails, and then thankfully most people just send me everything because I just tell them, I just want a brief bio. Um, 6 to 10 pieces of your work if you can, if it's music, some links or whatever people's worked on, and then any links or whatever that they want to include. So that's pretty easy, but then I have to format it and get it out there. So I want to, if I can, keep up with the blog at least once a week, and with the conversation series, the YouTube channel. I've done more guests than I had set out to do. I had, I think, 3 last month. It was only
Congratulations.
supposed to be one.
Congratulations on that. It's not easy.
Thank you. No, it's not. So I think I'd like to still stick with no more than 2 a month. And I just want to go for as long as I can. I'm not asking any money from anybody. I'm doing it for free. I'm doing it with my own time. And I want to do that. I want to give back to people because a lot of people have helped me along the way, and I'd like to just sort of pay it forward. But I also don't want it to take over too much of my time with my other projects. So the goal is to just be able to keep doing it for as long as possible, basically, and just kind of I've been trying to make the videos a little bit better as far as presentation. I'm very low tech, and I don't want to start buying all kinds of equipment because I'm not trying to make a career out of this and I'm not making money off of it. So the goal is to make it look a little nicer, a little more streamlined, but not put too much time into it either.
Hmm. So now, for you, what was one event or topic that made you question the world you live in?
That's. I was thinking about that because I knew you were going to ask that question. For me, it's a little different than what some people would answer. A lot of people talk about 9/11 and things like that, which was an eye opener to me. But for me, from an early age, I've always looked into things a bit further because of some paranormal experiences I've had and just strange stuff. So that's always had me really looking into things, and more over the years I've realized things are just not as they seem. So I can't really give you I could think of maybe a couple of things as a teenager with some kind of nighttime events for me where I thought I was being abducted and things like that. But as far as one specific event, I can't really say.
Mhm. So what kind of paranormal events are we talking about that happened in your life? if you'd like to talk about it.
Oh, sure. I have on some podcasts before. I've seen different kinds of what people would call spirits or apparitions. When I was younger, I was having these. I don't like to call them abductions. Now, I don't really know what they were, but I had quite a few incidents at night of things coming to me in my room and taking me off places and having sort of out of body experiences and things like that. And I've, even as an adult, like I've had a lot of sleep paralysis, and seeing shadow people, and all kinds of weird stuff.
Hmm. So now I know I asked you this question beforehand. So if you could choose three favorite shows in any genre, what would that be and why?
Well, I'm still a big fan of the OA. I like just the real fringe topics. So anything that's like interdimensional or just really thought provoking. I like that show for that. And I wrote things down because I forget. I like Twin Peaks, because anything that thinks outside of the box of what we're used to, I don't really like reality TV. I don't actually watch a lot of TV anymore. And I do, when I do, it's streaming. But you know, I like sci-fi, mystery, uh, psychological thrillers. Um, so Twin Peaks has a lot of that stuff going on. And what was the other? I had to write some down because, people would probably laugh at this, but I like Frasier a lot, the TV series from, I guess, the 90s. And because it's some kind of like slice of life and it's got like humor going on, and I call it a palate cleanser because if I watch something really serious or scary or whatever, I always would go to Frasier to try to like clean the slate in my mind to just have kind of like happy, relatable, everyday life, wackiness, humor, that kind of thing.
Mhm. Now, same question for movies. If you could choose three favorite movies in any genre, what would that be and why?
I love Young Frankenstein, Gene Wilder and Terry Garr and all those great people, Gene Hackman. That's always been a big favorite of mine. I tend to watch that. I don't even know how many times I watched it. I just really like the sort of the black and white and the whole story with the monster, the Frankenstein, and all that. And oh gosh, I love the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray.
Mhm.
Just it's funny to me now watching that again because I've watched that many times. Just exactly what the message is there. Like it comes off as just this sort of fun comedy, but there's a lot of significant messages in there, I think. And what else is there? I love Trains, Planes, and Automobiles with John Candy and Steve Martin. That's a really funny movie, but it's also got some kind of heartfelt messages in it. Uh, and I like more serious stuff like Melancholia by Lars von Trier. That's kind of like really existential, end of the world, deep thought stuff. I don't know. I could go on.
Mhm. Now, do you have any pets?
Yeah, I have my cat, Millicent Barnes. Had her
How
for about a little over a year now.
how's it been? Is this your first cat, or you've had
No, no, I had a cat years ago, when I was younger, and I've had quite a few different kinds of pets. I had a lot of rodents as a kid, all kinds of rodents, and I've had pet rats, which I actually really love. They're very affectionate and clean. People don't realize it's different from dumpster rats, the subway rats, things like
Mhm.
that. And I have had a snake, which I never thought I would have, but I loved her, and a dog. But right now I have the cat, so I love
How's the cat?
animals.
How's the cat doing?
She's good. She's mellowed out a lot. She's still a little crazy because she's probably about a year and a half old. Um, she's great. She's a calico, so she's very talky, very vocal, and really smart, and just always getting into stuff. But she makes it a lot of fun.
That's good.
Yeah.
Now, what genre of music do you enjoy listening to?
I like all kinds of stuff. I like shoegaze and post punk and rock and alternative, some classic rock, things like that.
Now,
I'm
what
all
are
over the
some
place.
Now, what are some of your favorite artists or bands you enjoy listening to then?
I love the Cocteau Twins and um, Portishead Beach House. Oh my gosh. I love Queen. I love, man, I can't even think. I just like, those are my go tos, but I like all kinds of stuff, like I said.
Mhm. Now, what is one album you can listen to repeatedly without getting sick of it?
Um, One of them I like to listen to is The Moon and the Melodies by the Cocteau Twins and Harold Budd. It's pretty old now, but it's one of my favorites.
Mhm. Now, what was your first ever concert you attended?
I was trying to think about that because I've been asked before, and I thought it was Lollapalooza, the first one in 1991, or was it 92? Maybe it was 92. But I think the very first one I went to was at City Gardens in Trenton, New Jersey, which is no longer there. It was kind of the CBGB of New Jersey, and a lot of really well-known bands played there. And I think the first one I saw was Bad Religion and All played in 1992.
Mhm.
So no, that would be Lollapalooza. But either way, that was the real like, Lollapalooza was a big thing with a lot of different bands, and this one was a smaller venue.
Mhm. Now, do you like to read?
I do. I don't as much as I used to, but I am doing some more reading lately.
So, what are some of your favorite book genres or authors you enjoy reading books from?
I like a lot of historical fiction, um, sci-fi, uh, anything fringe. So right now I'm reading "Behold a Pale Horse" by Bill Cooper, and "The End of Everything," which is Christopher, I think Artinian is his last name. It's kind of a zombie theme. As far as the third one, I don't know, but that's the kind of stuff I like.
Mhm. Now, tell me about the three most influential people in your life and how they affected you positively or negatively.
Well, first I would say my dad. He definitely had a big impact on me. Um, just my love of different kinds of arts and history and all of that. He's a real big inspiration and just really encouraging that way. And my mom was too, for sure, and she is to this day. Uh, and I would then say my great uncle, who was like a grandfather to me. He was definitely a big influence on me, and just sort of continuing my interest in nature and astronomy and all of that. And then I would say my friend Sea Love, who's probably going to cringe when she hears this. I have been friends with her for over 2 decades, and she's a bit older than me, so she's kind of like an older sister figure. And she's really stuck by me through thick and thin, through a lot of crazy stuff. And she's just always a good solid rock of support for me.
Mhm. So going back to your metalsmith, when you were creating any jewelry, did you experience any, like, injuries, serious injuries, or you've been, like, very, like, protective of yourself to not cause harm when you're making anything?
Knock on wood. I have not really ever had any sort of injury,
That's
thankfully. I
good.
mean, I've had minor, like, where I've, like, accidentally filed part of my finger or, gotten a couple little pieces of metal stuck in or just minor cuts and scrapes, but nothing major, thank goodness.
Mhm. So now if you had a time machine and you could travel to any time in history, where would it be? And if you could had an opportunity to change it, what would that be?
Where would I be? Wow. Well, I definitely. This is funny. I feel like I already time travel, but I'll probably still go to the past because I want to see what really happened here. As far as a place, I don't know. I mean, I've always been interested in Egypt, but I don't know. I don't know if I. It, I think my answer has changed from what it was, and I would definitely just want to see how we really got where we are because I don't feel like our history is true at all.
I completely agree with you. I agree with you. I enjoy history. I if history was one of my favorite subjects in high school, but now as I'm getting older, I like as things that gone on in history actually true or they have been made up to like just put in a book
Yeah,
and make people study it.
exactly.
It's like, oh, is this actually real or are
Yeah.
we just like pretending it was?
Even certain photographs of things like that, that I've seen evidence of things being changed, manipulated. So, and it's funny because like I said before, I love historical fiction, which is ironic because I feel like history is fiction now. You know.
Mhm. So speaking of pictures, what's your opinion on AI? And how you think that's gonna, like, affect, like, I know you don't do photography, but, like, like, photos in general going forward.
Yeah, I like to ask people this question a lot on my show, and it's not going away. I don't think it's going away unless we're going to have some kind of major event where it wipes out our power or whatever. But as far as the tech, because I have different ideas what AI is actually, but as far as what we're seeing in the mainstream with uh, the manipulation of photos, the deepfake videos, especially in the media with the news and all that. It's a challenge. It's a real challenge. I think there needs to be some kind of laws and regulations in place because um, it's getting harder and harder to tell what is made by a real person and what's generated by AI.
Mhm,
So I think it's still a problem, and I don't know what the solution is. I think we need to, in some respect, embrace it. I mean, we wouldn't, not that we're on AI right now, maybe we are, I don't really know, but the way we're communicating with technology has been a plus. I mean, I was born in 1973, so I've seen things really change over the decades as far as the technology. And there are a lot of benefits to it, but at the same time, the way that we're moving with uh, humans and transhumanism and things like that, it's a concern.
mhm, I agree. It's crazy. Like, I'm not into, the whole AI thing. I think it's, like, completely wrong, especially, like, if you're, like, a big artist and AI can just, like, pick your song up and just use it on its own.
Exactly.
It's like, "Really?"
Yeah, and then
And you can't even fight it in court
right.
because it's not a
Yeah,
real person.
and AI has its own. attorneys now too, right? So yeah, it's a real issue, I think.
Hmm. So now, what is the biggest lesson you have learned in your life so far?
Uh, I would say, I ask my guests on my show a lot about the word failure. And for me right now, it's really become clear to me that anything I considered a failure in the past was not a failure. Um, it's a big lesson to me to realize, just in general, like any kind of struggle or conflict that I've come across in my life has actually been a good thing for me. Even if it's been, I mean, there are things like abuse and other things, trauma, things like that. You don't want to say those are good things, but also it depends on your perspective and how you can grow as a person from those things and try to make something positive and more in line with the direction you want to go with your life.
Hmm. Now, what is the best advice you have received from someone?
um, well, it's interesting because I used to commute a lot, like all the time for work for years, from all over the place on trains mostly. And I would say it was back in 2009, 10. I had this friend that I made on the train, because when you commute, you run into the same people, and then eventually you say hello, and then sometimes you end up sitting together and talking the whole ride. So it developed that way. And this was an older gentleman, named Leonard. He was a rare bookbinder and a retired uh, electrician or something like that. And he was from Guyana, and I think he was like around 70 when I met him. And he was just commuting in and out of the city to visit his friends in Brooklyn and have lunch with them and stuff. Well, we had a lot of really deep conversations, and he really encouraged me to just not doubt myself and to really just go for whatever I wanted to do in life. And um, and he was right, because at the time I wasn't sure I was going to be able to get a job I really wanted. And he said, "Well, what's the big deal? Like, you just try it, and if you don't get it, well, then oh well, you get something else. But at least you tried to get what you wanted." And so I listened to that, because he said, "What do you have to lose? You don't have it now, so you're not going to lose it if you don't get it." So that was a big piece of advice to me, to just go for what you want, and to not give up, and to uh, have confidence.
Mhm. Now, what is the worst advice you have received from someone?
um, that's more difficult. Uh, I think just, oh gosh, I could think of. I actually had a customer once when I was in retail sales that was drunk and shopping, and she was just a beast. And I was killing her with kindness. I was not taking her abuse. And she said to me, "You're never going to get anywhere in this field if you act like that, blah, blah, blah." And I was thinking to myself, like, I don't want to get anywhere. I don't want to advance in retail. What is this lady talking about? But I don't know, that's not really a negative advice, but it just, anyone that has not thought that you can, I feel like you can do pretty much anything you set your mind to. And so I've had people along the way like, "You can't do that," or "How are you going to," always like the "how are you going to do it? And for me, it's like, I don't know, but I want to figure it out.
So you had self doubters in your life saying, "Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that," but all this long
Um,
you've done it just to like just ignore them, and you did what you wanted to do.
yeah. And if I had given up, I wouldn't have gotten to where I am.
Mhm. Now, if you could switch lives with any person for one day, who would you choose and why?
I wouldn't I wouldn't choose anybody. And the reason is, um, I think we all have perceptions of other people. And maybe they're great people, maybe they're doing great things, maybe they have their life together, maybe they're happy and fulfilled and successful. But we don't actually know, you know, at least if we don't know the person that well. And a lot of people think of celebrities as something they want to be. And I've dealt with a lot of them, and I've dealt with a lot of people over the years. And I'd rather just have what I know I have. So I'd rather just stay myself.
Mhm. So speaking of celebrities and politicians, why do you think so many people like to worship them like a lot? Because you've seen on social media some of these both in politics and like in the entertainment industry, some people like to go like above and beyond to like stalk them, harass them, do like inappropriate things to like online to them. Why do you think so?
I think there's a real lack of self there. I think the more that you spend time getting to know yourself, the less you're going to look outside of yourself for anything, a savior or, uh, I think they're looking to these people, they're idolizing them for maybe things that they want to be. But the thing is that we're all capable of being whatever we want to be. So I think there's a lot of people that just don't have confidence and don't have a good solid sense of self. Excuse me. That's it, really.
Okay. Now, what's your definition of success?
Uh, for me, success is feeling fulfilled in whatever I set my sights on, my endeavors, and all of that. Feeling content and happy and safe and comfortable, like not struggling, but mostly, uh, I would say, just feeling fulfilled.
Mhm. Now, can money can't buy happiness, or can money make you happy? What do you believe in? That's the most
It's
worded question I've
it's
asked.
yeah, it's nice to have money and it definitely helps. And when I have extra, it does make me feel good and I can buy stuff that I've been putting off or I want or whatever. But I have lost so much in my life. I've lost everything pretty much like 3 times. And it's just stuff and it's just money and money comes and money goes. And right now, I think we're printing more money than is actually backed. And so what does that mean? Like any time now, anything can happen where the ATMs doesn't work, don't work, and the market crashes and all that stuff. So I wouldn't rely on money too much. That's what I'd say to people. I don't think it's anything to put your eggs in that basket to be happy.
Yeah, I agree with that. I saw your post about one of the banks, like they like shut down people's accounts so they couldn't get like their money. Like
Yep.
that's reality. That's gonna happen soon. You will have to probably have like a one of those like apps where you have to like the government's gonna track you. Like, okay, you can take this much out, or we're gonna have like you're saying
Yeah.
a financial crash soon, and you're not gonna be able to take out anything.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it literally just happened about a week ago. I was going crazy posting about it because I just couldn't believe that it wasn't getting any real national attention. That it was like all the major banks, and I guess allegedly it was a clearinghouse issue in Federal Reserve. So it wasn't even the banks necessarily, and people couldn't get their money for days, and my bank was one of them. And thankfully, I didn't need any money at the time.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. No,
Which
I didn't know that.
yeah, so I couldn't. I was like, "What is going on here?" And I looked. I got onto my account and it had a message at the top talking about how um, deposits were delayed and this, that, and the other. And I was just like, and it said, you don't need to take any action at this time. And it's like, well, what about like, any automatic withdrawals, ACH stuff going through, bill pay, all those people that needed that money at the time, they have to wait to get reimbursed for like the bank fees and all of that for things that didn't go through.
Hmm. So now, will humans ever be able to work together to achieve a goal, or do you think humanity is kind of a lost cause?
uh, I don't know. I think anything's possible, but it's difficult right now to say what we're looking at. I think if we stay on the trajectory that we're on, it's not looking good. I always have hope that people will somehow pull it together, but I don't know.
Hmm. So what is holding back? What is holding humans back from working together to achieve to achieve a goal?
Ego, greed, um, fear.
Yeah, I agree with you. All those three. It's like it's. I agree. I completely agree with you because I've noticed that you say one thing online, people will jump at you, and then they just talk about the same topic for like months, and there will be no resolution to it. It'll
Yeah,
just be a repeated cycle with the topic. Because like move forward or or find a solution to the problem you are trying to share with the world on the internet.
yeah. Everybody's extremely polarized, and everybody's really quick to jump on each other online. They get to hide behind the safe screen and not have a real human interaction like we all used to, and just have genuine, respectful debates. But now it's just attacking.
Hmm. So now, questions to end the episode. What is giving you hope right now?
I would say other creative people that are still finding ways to create things and find beauty in the world and make beauty in the world. Um, I would say that's probably the biggest thing right now.
Hmm. Do you listen to podcasts?
Not as much as I was.
So I know you're not anymore, but what are three podcasts you recommend to my listeners and why?
um, I like to listen to The Melt with Chris Snipes and Hunter Muse. They cover a wide range of topics, um, kind of thought provocative, mind bending stuff, fringe stuff. Oh my gosh, I think I had written down a couple because it's hard for me to think about. Oh, I actually really love, I don't know if it's necessarily a podcast, it's a channel called Synergy on Odyssey with this woman, Sabrina. She's talking about the tech and what it's doing to us. So I highly recommend her. And you. You. I think you're doing a good job and you have a good variety of guests. And, you know, I think people should check you out.
Well, thank you. So now, if you had 5 minutes to speak with the entire world, what would you want to tell them? This can be anything you want.
I don't know if it's going to be 5 minutes, but I think I would advise people to think for themselves and to do their own research, to not just believe everything that's presented to them, and to realize that our world is just not as it has seemed to be. Don't let anybody tell you how to think or to censor you or to sort of pigeonhole and control the information coming to you. I don't know what happened to people with critical thinking. over these last several years or even decades, but definitely the more recent years, people just trusting blindly in authority figures when we've seen countless evidences that they are corrupt and that they are serving themselves. And whatever happened to working for the people? So question the world around you and take the time to look into things.
And lastly, where can people find you online?
I have my website, which is rendeblancbrand.com, and that is where I'm currently housing the Muse Memorandum blog. And I'm on YouTube with the Muse Memorandum, and Twitter, JJ Rendeblanc, and Instagram, which is Rendeblanc, and the Muse Memorandum. I've got 2 on there, and I think I do have a link tree. I think that's about it.
You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Hawkett Podcast. You can find my interviews on Rumble, Hawkett Podcast as well. And if you're interested in buying my merch, you can buy it on www.etsy.com/Hawkett Podcast store. You have to write it all in one word. And that's it for me. Thank you so much, JJ, for coming on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me, Amit.